This is Niceguy Eddie, and you're listening to In My Humble Opinion on Rainbow Radio. My guest tonight is a motivational speaker, an advocate for LGBT and human rights, and the producer of the documentary and ongoing series, Sexing the Trans Man. It's my pleasure to be joined tonight by Buck Angel. Buck, welcome to the program.
Right on. Thank you so much for having me.
I should say to people, we were just discussing this just before the show started, but let's start at the beginning, actually, a little bit before the advocacy work. You actually got your start originally in adult filmmaking.
Yes, I did. I did. I was originally I was a porn star.
So, well, I guess to get that out of the way, because of course, and this was kind of what you were saying, is as soon as people hear that, that's immediately what they go to. So let's immediately go to that. How did you get into that, and what was that? What was that all about?
Well, I mean, I was working in adult films, and I was working in the fetish side of adult films, and I was working behind the camera, and I was also producing a trans woman's website. And with all of that producing, I noticed that there were no transsexual, which is what we called it back in the day, transsexual men in porn. At all. Can you even think about pornography, right? Think about going on the internet. Think about putting in, pony play. Think about putting in gum chewing porn, clown porn. Didn't see anybody like me.
Right.
And so, that's why I really was like, wow. And it wasn't for my activist work, or I wasn't making a political statement. It was really because as an entrepreneur, or as someone who really saw an opening to make money and to make something, I was like, oh my God, I could be the man with the pussy.
That was early on. That was you were built that way.
It was that totally. That's how it all started.
So, because like you say, it was something that had never been seen before. And of course, I think now at the time we're talking, I'm assuming that transgender, or as you say, transsexual, which sort of gives us some sense of time frame here, that would be a niche market anyway. What were the early at the time? What were the early reactions like from the viewers, and what kind of feedback did you get on that? What was the reaction?
Shockingly to say, so of course, transsexual women's porn is huge, and it was very big at the time. And it's like one of the biggest selling niches in the market. I don't even know if it's a niche anymore. But anyway, that said, they freaked. Everyone in the adult entertainment business freaked out on me. My community freaked out on me. Everyone was like, they, like I was saying earlier, they thought I was the Antichrist. The amount of hate mail I got was unbelievable. The things that people said to me. I mean, I have it all. I'm actually going to put together a book eventually of all the hate mail, because it's fascinating.
When life sends you lemons, huh?
Yes, and by showing my vagina to the world as a man, it threw everybody for a loop. And they were they lost their minds. Everyone lost their minds.
And so you're saying some of this even came from the transgender and or LGBT community then?
Yes, a lot of it did. And the thing is this, when I did it, nobody else had done it. There was no market. There was nothing. I established everything. But even as someone who's establishing something like that, and you have no market, how do you find your market, right? I mean, what is your market? I personally thought my market was going to be, women, but it wasn't. It ended up being gay men. And that even caused more controversy.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's that.
Wow.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Now, I'm curious about the tone of that, because I think the more measured response these days, if there was an angry response, would be along the lines of enabling the fetishization of trans bodies, etc., which is something that is a serious issue. And I'm wondering if the mail at the time, the hate mail at the time was, and I mean specifically the hate mail coming from the LGBT community, was that well thought out, or if it was pretty much just raw anger.
Well, mostly the hate mail from the community was from other transsexual men. They were so mad at me because they said, what you're doing is fetishizing us. Let me just clarify that. Fetishizing is not a bad thing. In my world, it is not a bad thing. It means actually people are interested in you sexually. It is not a negative thing.
Well, I'm not going to take up the crusade for that personally, but there's going to be a lot of disagreement about that, though.
Of course, I get into the argument all the time. But the thing is this, we're all entitled to believe what we want to believe, and we're all entitled to think that. None of us are right or wrong. It's just our thought. And for me, my thought process of what I was doing and what I still do is that I'm not fetishizing anything. I'm actually showing a different side of sexuality and gender. That's what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm actually embracing my body, embracing the body that I choose to have, and not that any. And if somebody likes what I am and likes and gets off on it sexually, I think that's hot and amazing. And so all these gay men wrote me all these emails and were like, oh my God, I've fantasized about a man with a pussy my whole life. Okay. So there is something to be said about that.
Right.
If people were already thinking about a man like me and I just brought it out, right? It was already on people's minds, but it just had never been actually thought of and put out there. So fetishizing is a very difficult, I mean, we could clearly have this conversation for a long time, but it just depends on what you think fetishizing is and how you think that it's a negative thing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I kind of wonder if you're getting hate mail also from the more conservative or religious community. I guess part of me wants to say, why were you guys watching transgender porn in the first place? It bothers you that much.
Exactly. I say it all the time. I'm like, really? Well, how did you come by my videos in the first place, Mike?
You have to be careful what you complain about sometimes. Exactly. You may be revealing more than you think.
Right on.
God. So now, okay, sort of to transition from that, which was early in your career, to some of more of the education and advocacy work that you do today. I'm curious. Back in, I think it was 2006, you made it, and maybe you've made multiple appearances. I don't know. You made an appearance on the Howard Stern show.
Yes.
And I had watched this clip on YouTube recently, and I guess a couple things struck me. One, it struck me how quickly Robin Quivers figured out what the big secret was. Because I guess to give people a little context, the point of this bit was, I have a secret, try to guess what it is, and they sort of do like a 20 questions thing. Yes. And it took them all of 2 questions to figure it out. And it wasn't like, I mean, God, who would have gone there immediately? Robin figured it out after the second question.
Yes.
But one thing that I was struck, and granted, this is 2006. Now, in 2006, nobody was talking about transgender issues in terms of any major political thing. This is something that's come about roaring into the public consciousness within the last couple of years, at least as far as the mainstream is concerned. 2006, I can't imagine that. I mean, the world, it's got to be black and white compared now. But I'm watching you trying to educate Howard Stern a bit, and he is just, well, the modern parlance would be brutally misgendering you over and over and over again, insisting that you're a woman, etc. You have a vagina, you're a chick, I think were his exact words. And he said it like 2 or 3 times. And I guess I wonder, nowadays, if this were to happen word for word just like that today, there would be a huge response to that. There would be a backlash. Now, whether or not he would give a shit, I don't know, because he kind of does his own thing. But there would be a backlash. And I wonder in 2006, was the psychology any different? Was the response any different? How did it feel from your point to be on this person's show and then just insisting, no, you're a woman, that's it. You're not going to convince me otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. So everything you said is so right. If we fast forward and put that to today, that never would have happened. And people,
it might still live on Howard Stern, but there would have been
still on Howard Stern. But I guarantee you, like, he has trans people on there all the time, and he acts differently now than he did that.
Okay. So there has been an evolution for him as well.
Evolution. We didn't have the same community that we have today.
Right.
And I was pretty much the only trans man really out there. He had trans women on at the time too, but I was the only trans man of any sort of notoriety, for lack of a better word, that could even be out there. So that said, I already knew I had a goal. Let me tell you, my goal was to become famous. That is not my goal anymore, but my goal was to become famous, huge, rich, like really just put it out there, whatever I needed to do. My work was not political like it is now. It was not activism. It was, I'm going to be a famous porn star. And so I took every opportunity I could. And so Howard Stern, please, I would have been an idiot not to go on that show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hell yeah.
I knew I was going to get bashed, but I'm pretty tough. I've learned to be pretty tough, and it helped. Those things helped me to become a tougher, more focused person in a sense that I know exactly what was going on that show. And if you watch the whole thing, I let him say those things to me. And when they said, let's get Buck to ride the Sibian. Yeah. They didn't realize who they were talking to, because I'm like, yeah, let me ride that Sibian.
Oh, jeez. So now you did this. This was, now again, I'm watching this on YouTube. That was on the air, though? You did that live on the air?
Yeah. And let me tell you, that was one of the most humiliating things I've ever done in my whole life, because these straight men who have no idea about, they just I was naked and I was doing the thing on the
Oh,
Sibian, and
wow.
they were just making the most mean. They were saying, "Oh, you stink! This is gross. I've never seen anything
Really?
disgusting." Oh, they were just
Oh
going
my
at it, and I
God.
just shut my eyes and I went to a vision of something that was hot and sexy for me, and I just had an orgasm right on the show, and
In the
I
middle
still,
of being abused by these people?
it was awesome.
That
And
that's
but it's a
astounding.
show. And after the show, Howard
Wow.
came backstage and he's like, "You're great. He's a different person off of
Well,
me."
yeah, yeah, no doubt. I think that's yeah,
Yeah, it
but
was all play. And
wow,
today that would never happen.
right,
And it happened, and I'm cool with it. I still am cool with it. I
right.
don't. People will say that what I did was a disservice to the community. I don't believe so. I
Not
believe that I got through to a bunch of people who listen to Howard Stern, who
right.
will call us nasty, ugly, homophobic, transphobic people who wrote me amazing emails after I was on that
Yeah,
show and said, "You're amazing. I would never think a guy like you would make me say that." And I was like,
right.
I did my job.
Yeah, well, I guess to say that you did a disservice, not in 2006, you didn't.
Right,
To do a
exactly.
show like that today, like you say, would be very different. But in
Yeah.
2006, I mean, this was a world in which mainstream wasn't even supporting any kind of LGBT rights. I mean, now we live in a world post Supreme Court decision on gay marriage now the big political topics, at least as far as the opposition is going right now, is transgender issues are right in the forefront, and I mean for better or worse because the issues are being framed by the opposition largely, and that's unfortunately how a lot of things happen in this country. But but I mean, yeah, in 2006, this is a completely different world,
Yes.
and
And so really for me, it was a great experience.
yeah,
It does nothing but great things for me still. It's out there. It'll never go away.
oh
And
yeah,
so for me, it just brings up what's great about it is exactly what you're saying. You can see the growth just from 2006 to now in
right,
language, the way we are, the amount of more people who are transitioning,
mm-hmm.
everything.
Yeah,
So for me, it just shows the amazing ability to create a community in a really quick time. I mean, really, if you think about it, we're still fighting for gay rights. Trans rights are moving way faster than any gay rights have ever moved, as far as I'm
right.
concerned.
To go from obscurity to being right in the forefront
Yes.
and being, I mean, again, not necessarily in a good way, because this is coming in the form of a lot of these bathroom bills and quote
Yes.
unquote religious freedom bills, which is basically just, oh yeah, we can discriminate and treat people like shit,
Yeah.
because that's what Jesus would want, of course. So it's not coming. It hasn't necessarily moved forward in entirely positive ways, although certainly, yeah. I mean, when you compare to just the non-existence of even a discussion, and that was like 10 years ago. I mean, in the last
Yes.
decade, it's in the last couple of years, it's really come a long way.
It's
So
incredible. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. I transitioned over 20 years ago. In the
wow,
last 2 years, we have so many things that have changed, so many laws and legislation that have changed so much. And
yeah,
I also am a gay person, so I also talk about how, as a gay person, I don't see the same amount of intense change that I see within the trans community,
mm-hmm.
meaning laws, meaning the way that we have to move around in the world. I still
Yeah.
see a lot of gay people having to fight for rights for so many years, whereas trans stuff has been changed like that.
Right. And I
That's
wonder I wonder how much because I think my thought for a while, and again I'm not quite as new to I've been having this discussion for more than just the last 2 years, meeting people online and through like blogs and a lot of comic strips. I read a lot of web comics anyway, and web comic artists are always eager to come on and talk about their work. So that's been another source of information. But there's a lot of thought, a lot of animosity from the trans community, at least from individuals that I spoke to. I should say they're not necessarily representative of everybody, but a lot of animosity towards LGB people. And the LGB movement, I should say, in that a lot of the legislative victories and a lot of the rights and a lot of the progress that has been made essentially throwing transgender people under the bus as the very first bargaining chip. And this was a common perception about the HRC. It was a common, and I even had one transgender friend of mine go so far as to say that she didn't like LGB. And I was
wow.
like, what do you mean
Wow.
you don't like LGB? She's like, okay, I like LGB people. Like, I've never met an actual LGBT person that I haven't liked, but the movement has done nothing for me. Now, we were having this conversation maybe a year or two ago, And my thought at the time, and again, cishet white male, it's not my place to comment on put my opinion anywhere. But my thought at the time was that progress for the LGB movement would move the conversation forward for transgender, not just transgender, but transgender, intersex, gender fluid, etc. Everybody to the right of the T in that acronym. And I wonder if maybe some of the fact that this progress is happening so quickly, I wonder if maybe the conversation was going along and we didn't know it, or do you think there's something to that, or is that maybe a misguided way of looking at it?
It's difficult, I'm telling you, but I'm going to tell you what I really think a lot of, and I know it because I work in the sex business, and I understand this weird behavior specifically in the United States around anything that has to do with sex. It can be anything from sex education all the way to pornography. Right. The way we react to anything that deals with sex or sexuality is shut it down.
Right.
Shut it down.
Yes.
So that said, what is gay? What are the first thing people think about when they think of a gay person, right? They they think about sex.
Right.
What do these people do in bed, or how do they have sex? Or when they think of trans people, what is the first thing they think about? They think about gender.
Right. Well, yeah, suddenly it's okay to ask what's in somebody's pants. And it's like, would you meet a girl and say, oh, yeah, by the way,
But for me, the reason why I believe that the trans movement legally, why a lot of legal things are happening faster, is because the rest of society has a less harder time understanding gender than they want to even talk about sex or sexuality. So when it comes to gays, they're like, whoa, the gays, it's just, they're perverts and they just have sex with each other and they just want to, where the trans people, okay, I understand. It makes sense to me that a woman wants to be a man or a man wants to be a woman, right? So I think it's easier generally for society to understand the difference between gender and sexuality when it comes to that. And that's why I believe that trans rights are moving, because in a way people have less of issues around gender than they do around sexuality.
Interesting. I think you may actually be the first person I've talked to that has that experience.
People, when I say that to them, they're like, "Oh my God, I never thought about that." And I'm like, I think about it all the time because I deal with sex and I know the negativity that sex gets. The first thing people think about when they think about gay people is sex. That's it. They don't think about love. They don't think about two people, just liking each other. They don't think about any of it. They think about sex, and that just makes people act out insanely.
Right. And I assume that this feeds into a lot of the education advocacy work that you do.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about some of the speaking that you do nowadays?
Well, most of the stuff, I'm so blessed and lucky that I get to go around the world and people bring me in to talk about my transition because I am 53 years old now and I transitioned 21 or 2 years ago. I don't even, I've lost track at this time. Yeah. But that said, people bring me all over the world to speak at universities, to speak at gay and lesbian events, to speak at just straight events, to speak at shops, to speak anywhere and everywhere to talk about my transition and also to talk about sexuality. Because sexuality and sex were the thing that really helped me to be able to become this man who feels very comfortable and confident as a man with a vagina. It was sex that did that. It wasn't building my body up. It wasn't my surgery. It was all those things came into play. But the defining factor of me sitting here today and feeling confident in my body and not feeling that I need to have a penis was sex and feeling confident in my body sexually. So I have a lot of passion and I feel very passionate about sex and how sex can help people to become so much more confident in their body. And that's what I go around the world and talk about.
And this, it sounds like that you then have a pretty diverse audience in terms of that. This isn't just strictly within the preaching to the choir then.
No, I don't preach to the choir, actually. And in fact, other than the gay pride things, most of the time I speak to the cisgender world and the straight world, which is awesome. And it's exactly where I want to be because I don't need to, like you said, preach to the choir. I need to speak to the outside world. And it's phenomenal the way that these people react to me. I have made so many amazing friends and fans and people just by being me and people just seeing like we just want to be part of society. I'm not asking for anything special.
Oh, people come on. You're trampling all over everyone's religious freedom.
Exactly.
I can't even say that with a straight face.
It's amazing though. Once I go and I speak and then people are like, oh my God, I had such a different idea about people like you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, because you didn't really just get to sit down and listen to where we come from and who we are and why we are this way. And that, I'm also the guy who educates through humor, and I'm the guy who also educates without making you feel like stupid for asking me what you might think is a stupid question.
Right.
Because for me, that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If it's a question, it's a question that you don't know and you need to ask.
Right.
Then I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable to ask, because then you'll never know, and then you'll just keep having negative thoughts.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I guess it's a good thing that you have the that you're comfortable enough with yourself, and that you have that strength of personality to be able to stand up. And essentially, I assume you probably get what the average trans person would consider, or for that matter, the average cis person would consider to be somewhat invasive questions during some of these talks.
Of course, and why the trans movement really today a lot of times leaves me out of this new sort of mainstream kind of way, because I do talk about my genitals, and I believe that it is an important thing to talk about, because I didn't get bottom surgery and I never will have bottom surgery. And because I have a vagina, I think it is important for me to talk about my vagina and why I kept it and why I still feel that I'm a man even though I have it. So a lot of the trans community doesn't want to talk about their genitals, which is fair and fine. And
neither, to be fair, neither does a lot of the cis community. If somebody I just met started asking me questions about my penis, I think I'd punch them. I mean, I don't think that's a normal line of conversation in any context.
It's not. But I clearly am the man who wants to talk about it, because I clearly do feel it's important. But not the whole trans community does, and I don't think the whole trans community should have to. But that said, I don't think I should be left out of the conversation, because I still do believe that our bodies and our genitals should be part of a discussion that says, you know what? You don't have to conform to the way the world or society has always said we have to be. It's important for people to understand there's no right or wrong way to be. You choose to be how you want to be.
And I suppose that it's probably, from some perspective, yes, they don't want that conversation to happen that involves them. But hey, if you're happy to go up and pinch hit for them and have that conversation instead, I mean, that's a service right there.
Right on.
Yeah. So now, I did mean to ask you, and I'm kind of glad that you brought it up, because it's not normally something I would ask of somebody, but you've specifically said this. I'm curious about your decision not to get bottom surgery. One of the things, I guess, my immediate assumption would be that there is the techniques going FTM as opposed to MTF are not as refined and not as the results are more mixed. Was this a technical limitation, or was this truly a personal decision? I mean, if you could literally wave a magic wand, would you still make the same decision?
Now in my life, I will never have surgery. No.
Okay.
But back in the day, of course, I totally wanted to have a penis. I mean, I did a lot of research. You have to understand, again, how old I am. And when I started my transition, guess what? There was no internet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. That's true. Yeah.
That always blows people away. I didn't have the same opportunities that we have today, where we can Google, bottom surgery, and we can see pictures and we can talk to doctors. I had a limited amount of any kind of research that I could have done on the bottom surgery. And back in the day, it was not something that when I saw it, I cried, because for me, I was like, what am I going to do? Yeah. This is not what I can have. It's not functioning the way a cisgender man is functioning. It just all the things you have to go through. And I just want to also give you a disclaimer right now that I am in no way anti-bottom surgery. This is my story and why I chose not to. But so many men who choose to do it, and it's their option to do it, and they can do it. And I think it's amazing that they do it. But again, this is my story, and I am not anti-bottom surgery. But at the time, it just was not anything that I could. It was very expensive. Yeah. You had to take tendons out of your arm and take skin off your back, and you just ended up looking all messed up. And I was like, what? Yeah. And you might not even grow. And then some guys were getting gangrene and then having to have it cut off. And I'm thinking, why would I do this? It was depressing. And I actually went into a state of depression for a while around it, and was very disconnected with my body. And then one day, really, I was just masturbating, and through masturbation and having an orgasm, I realized, oh my God, this thing is amazing. Why would I get rid of it? And really, like I said earlier, sex was the defining factor for me, and why I chose not, because you can also lose your orgasms. There's all these things that come with getting that surgery that I just felt like weren't more pro, you know what I mean, for me to do it. And so it was a big decision for me. It was a very big decision. And today I'm so okay with it, and I feel very confident in myself, and I don't feel in any way that need to have a penis to be a man. I feel very
Right.
confident with my body.
Well, and as you know, a lot of people, I think well, again, going back to the somewhat misguided conventional wisdom of the last 20 years or however many, going back forever, is the idea that your gender or your sex changes with the surgery. And as I was watching, going back to the clip with Howard Stern, and he seemed really hung up on that at the time as well. Like, well, have you had the surgery? Oh, no, then you're a woman. And I'm thinking about this going, well, what would be different about this person that they took a bit of skin off of his back and a tendon out of his arm, as you say, and sewed something on? Now you're magically different? What is actually nothing? 0.1% of your molecules have been rearranged, and certainly nothing that defines who you are, which is, of course, is all between your ears, not between your legs, has changed. So why would you accept that, but not the person as they are? And I realized, well, that's the difference between 2006 and today. Is that those people who get it, and it's still not everybody, but there's an increasing number of people that understand, no, that's not actually the end all and be all. It is important for some people, and that's fine. And I think insurance should cover it. I know, all of that. I support all of that. But like you say, it's a very personal decision. Shouldn't be viewed as something that's a requirement to be recognized or to,
right on. And it is a personal choice. And also within our community, we have to stop bashing each other around it. We do that within our community. Yeah. And that was the other thing, is I got bashed early on by my community, trans male community, that I was walking around telling everybody, going on the internet and showing my vagina. And then everyone is going to think all trans men have vaginas. And they were just bashing me and making me feel really like I was making this decision for everybody.
Right.
And it's one of the things that happens within our community. There's a lot of bashing and a lot of internal hatred and internal jealousy and envy. And we all have to be the same, and we all have to speak the same. And it is just really, we have a lot of work to do. Let me just say that.
You're actually not the first person to come on and express that, but I guess I would view that as, you kind of have a unified opposition, a very well-organized, vocal, well-funded, so I think there's maybe a temptation to say, we have to speak with one voice to compete with that. And then unfortunately that becomes, I don't know, it's like that experiment with the monkeys that go up the ladder and they get sprayed with the water. I'm not going to go into that, but basically you sort of turn, the group starts to turn on itself. It's like you sort of lose sight of what were we fighting for in the first place?
No, you're right, my friend. That's exactly what's happening. And every day I have to put that out there. We need to stop. There is a thing called power in numbers, people. And if we all just understand, a community is this. People don't even understand what a community is. A community is built on individuals. We are individuals first, and then we come at each other as one thing, and we have one common goal, which is to be happy as trans people. And we are all individuals. We have to stop thinking that there's one way to be trans, and if we're not all speaking the same language and not all being, then we're not part of the community. That is just a completely wrong way to be coming at it, and we'll never ever grow. We'll never grow as a community because of that.
Now, are there other specific issues that you address in these talks that you do in the education?
Well, mostly I'm really this guy who's learned how to be so happy and so comfortable and so grateful to be alive, because I had such a horrible childhood in a sense that more puberty. My childhood was pretty normal, but that said, I tried to commit suicide many times. I was a cutter. I was an alcoholic. I was a drug addict. I was homeless. I was a prostitute. I can go on and on and on. I was a mess. I was a mess until I discovered myself. And so what I talk about, and that's the reason why I believe talking to outside of my community, because they can relate to my message. My message isn't about being a transsexual man or transgender man. It's not that. My message is about being a human being and really learning how to love myself. Because when you learn to love yourself, everyone else can love you. If you don't know how to love yourself, nobody will ever love you. And it is a big message that I learned. And I learned to be confident in myself because I learned to say that I don't have to conform. I don't have to say that because you're telling me I'm not a man without my penis. That's not true. So my message of self-love and learning how to find out what is stopping you from becoming what you want to be or why you're not happy has really transcended my pornography work, my activist work, everything. It's just kind of taken me to this level of why I say motivational speaker. But now I'm really feeling so much more like a human rights activist and really trying to get people to understand all of us are the same. All of us are humans at the core base of everything. We are humans, and we have to stop hating each other.
Yeah.
This is my really ultimate goal and message, is to really make this dynamic change in the world.
Well, the history of people who have come along and suggested that everybody should live together in love, peace, and happiness generally is it does not usually end well. They don't have a good track record. I mean, Jesus, John Lennon, it's Muhammad. Most of these people end up, like executed or something. It's you wouldn't think that peace, love, and happiness would that be that controversial an issue, but man, some people are just not going to stand for it.
Oh, you are so right on, my friend. Some of the crazy emails I get say exactly that. I spoke at Yale University a while back, and
no kidding.
Oh my God, the death threats were out of control. Wow. They were out of control by alumni. Alumni telling me not to come, they'll hang me from the tree.
Right. Now, how do you, okay, obviously you get a lot of mail like that. You realize most of it is in fact just idiots venting, especially online. But I mean, like, you're going to go appear somewhere. Is that in the back of your head when you're going there? I mean, are you looking around? I mean, are you thinking, Jesus, this place got enough security? I mean, you get enough of that. That's got to make you nervous.
Well, it's weird. I'm not nervous, and I don't know why. And it's because, was Jesus nervous? I'm just kidding.
Maybe right around the time everyone said Barabbas. Oh shit! They were supposed to. That wasn't. I really thought they were going to say me. Oh God! Now we're going to have a whole lot of people pissed off at us. No, but yeah, that's. I mean, again, you describe some of the way that you put yourself out there. I mean, that's a personal strength that is just
scared. I can't be scared, friend. I cannot be scared, and I will not let those people scare me. I lived in fear my whole life. I lived hating myself. I hated everything.
Yeah.
There is no way some dipshit is going to tell me he's going to hang me from a tree and I'm going to be worried about it. You know what? Okay. I'm not that guy. And that I already know. It's so many trolls on the internet that just love to do that stuff. They live for it. Yeah. You know what? They're sad. I learned really about trolls. And really, trolls are very sad people.
Yeah.
And so I just learned to actually give them back love. I give them back as much love. I always say I love you. When people write me, I'm going to kill you, you're an antichrist, I always write back, I love you, my friend. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Oh, come on. It's so much more fun, though, to sling the mud back at him, isn't it? No, absolutely. Now, I'm curious then, because you mentioned growing up, and you certainly mentioned at the time, there would have certainly been a dearth of knowledge and understanding about this. Are these issues that you talk about, is this something that should be taught as a matter of course in public schools, do you think? And would that help people?
You mean talking about being trans, or
I mean, we can't even get the country to agree on comprehensive sex education that includes contraceptive methods. But yeah, I mean, sexuality, gender identity, that sort of thing. How do you feel? So do you think that you'll ever see that?
Yes, I do. Well, I do think that we will see it. I most definitely see it already in the European countries. They already start talking about it at grade school level. And it's amazing. It's like Sweden, all these progressive countries that are far ahead of us. And like nudity is normal. And everyone goes to when you go to the sauna there, it's like women, men, children, like everyone's just naked. It's not a big deal. Like they're just so far ahead of us on so many levels. Right. But that said, yes, I think that it will happen here. I can't say when. I sure hope it happens in my lifetime. Right. We already have at the university level. We do have gender studies and sexuality studies. So that's a good thing because those are 18-year-old kids. I call them kids. Already going to school. So they're at least they're getting a little bit of that education. Right. But I don't even think we have sex ed in school anymore, do we?
Like, not in a useful way. I mean, not any. It's basically in half the country. It's don't have sex because you'll get a disease and you'll get pregnant and your husband will view you like a used toothbrush or something like that. I mean, it's all That was actually an example where a guy and they got in a little bit of trouble for this. This was a few years back that the instructor took up a brand new toothbrush and one that looked like he had just come from cleaning the bathroom with it. and said, okay, now which one of these would you rather have? Well, this is what happens when you have sex. This is what you are. And it's like, oh my fucking God, are you kidding me? You know, and this is somebody who's educating. I use that term loosely.
Yeah, right.
Children. And you know, it's like, so yeah, you don't even get to that point, but you know, these are people who are convinced that if you don't teach, you know, if you keep condoms out of high schools, teenagers won't have sex.
I know, it's shameful and gross.
Yeah.
And so, I've been asked to speak at youth organizations, and then all of a sudden, the day before, so they call me up. Our executive, director decided that you're inappropriate to be talking to 15-year-olds.
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? They're the ones who asked for me to come. They want me to come. Yeah. So anyway, what I've learned is that I get shut down again around talking about, sex, which is very important. So thank you for the internet. Because what I do is I just open up my Skype and I invite all those 15-year-olds to watch me on Skype and have a conversation, not naked or nude.
Right. But to have that conversation.
Sex.
Yeah.
What questions do you have as a young gay guy or a young gay woman or a trans guy that you aren't getting answered at school or at home? And I can answer your question, hopefully. Right. Because you can't shut me down. You cannot shut me down. I will continue to do my work, and thank God for the internet. Yeah. These kids, they need to learn that. They need to learn to understand that young women don't have to have sex if they don't want to, or they can feel love to another woman, or they can, guys can have sex if they wear condoms. And, there's just but we have to start having the conversation that sex is positive, that sex is part of a healthy part of growing up and life. Right. It's ridiculous. Right. It's ridiculous. It makes me so angry.
Well, I guess this is two-part then. Is there a particular topic or question that you get asked a lot? And then on the flip side of that, is there a particular misconception that you find yourself repeatedly having to address and or debunk?
Yeah, those are great questions. I would say that the most basic question I get asked, which is quite interesting for me still, is what restroom do you use? I still get that question. And you see pictures of me. Look at right now. Like, are you kidding?
I'm gonna embarrass probably you and my wife a little bit in this. We were talking about this earlier tonight, and because there's a second interview I had tonight, the night that we're recording this, and so I said, hey, for the first time, because I've never had a trans man on my program, and I also have never had at least a self-identified non-binary person on my program, and I've had both of those tonight, the night that we're recording this. And I asked her, I said, so what kind of a question would you have? What do you think would be interesting? And the bathroom thing did come up. Not quite like you just said it, but it did come up. And it was clear to me that she was maybe a little bit confused about who was going where and who thought who needed to go where. So I said, so wait, no, I think you're confused. Trans man, what the laws would force essentially is these bathroom bills as they're being proposed would essentially force you into the ladies' room.
Yes.
And I asked my wife, I said, she had seen your picture. I said, well, what would you think if you're in the ladies' room and Buck Angel walks in? And she goes, oh, I'd assume he was there to rape me. and she immediately said, oh, come on, that's a terrible thing to say. But of course, again, to describe you to anybody who hasn't seen the picture, you are very, very muscular, very tattooed, bearded, or with a Fu Manchu or goatee in most pictures that I've seen, and shaved head. So very, and half of the pictures I saw, you're kind of snarling and chomping on a cigar. Yeah. So a very masculine, very manly, and if I were to put a crude stereotype to it, I would say kind of look like an ex-convict a little bit, and I think this was what she was referring to. But the idea that that's where you should be is ridiculous. And actually, it's one of those things where there's been a movement against these bills where trans men, very masculine trans men, have essentially taken pictures of themselves in ladies' bathrooms and or just outside the door saying, do I look like I belong in here? I mean, have you guys thought this through? Because, this doesn't look right, does it?
It is just another one of those weird things that people are going off of the binary and nonsense and not looking at the whole picture. Yeah. And go to Europe. No problems in Europe. Everybody uses the same toilet. No one's tripping out on there. Everyone's going in there to do their business. Nobody cares. Right. Nobody cares. Like, really, it's just like we have so many more important things to be spending our time and money on in this country than what toilet you're going to take a dump in. Like, really? It's so stupid.
Right.
But to me, I think it's a ploy to have everyone look over here and look over here. And that
Absolutely.
way we're not concentrating on the real issues of this country.
Which of course is the intended outcome. I mean,
Yeah,
the people that are pushing these don't want people focused on the real issues of this
that's what
country.
I'm
So
saying.
yeah, it's absolutely a ploy.
Total look over here, look over here.
Yeah,
These weird people want to use your toilet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
exactly.
we can continue to keep bombing and killing everybody in the world and not get health care. Health care is a human right.
Yep.
The fact that we don't have health care in this country is disgusting.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna get on politics and I'm gonna get all crazy.
Oh no, that's great. In fact, I was going to ask you. I was going to talk about important where you see your social and legislative priorities. In fact.
Well, I don't even know where to begin. I'm really, like I said, I'm a human rights guy, and I really am so horribly disgusted at what warmongers we are here and how we continue to fund so much of war, and hate, and kill. And we don't see it because we continue to blind everybody with this whole terrorism stuff. And
Yeah.
not that terrorism doesn't exist, it clearly exists,
Yeah.
but not on the level that we continually try to pursue in this country and get people to give away their rights.
Right.
I just read today where they're now going to make people from certain states in this country have two forms of identification or you will not be able to fly. Are you kidding? Not everybody has two forms of identification.
No.
And one of them said that they won't even accept like specifically California driver's license.
Well, there were several states that resisted the I want to say the Real ID Act, I believe is what it was called. And it was more than it was several states because and valid concerns about data privacy and everything else, but essentially they're getting like a 1-year reprieve after which that won't even count as a valid form of ID. Meanwhile, these are a lot of the same people who insist on valid IDs for voting, even though and that's again a completely dumb issue that's everyone who thinks they're an expert on that is distorting the hell out of it because it really isn't.
It's like, are we in 1950 again?
Yeah.
Like we're living in 1950. Like we're living in Nazi land. Are you kidding me? Shit is getting shut down left and right, and everyone's just worried about what toilet we're going to go to the bathroom in. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
it scares me. It really, really. I was never very big on politics, or I just kind of, I think that happens when you're young, and then when you get older, you starting to realize you better start looking to see what's happening in this country.
Right.
And then I'm like, now I'm in my 50s, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I should have been paying attention a long time ago.
Well, and the conversation had changed because you start again go back because we go back a ways go back to the 1980s and think about where we were as a country and then realize that even now we're way to the right of where we were when Ronald Reagan was president.
Yes.
And he was considered controversially to the right at the time. And it is finally, I think, with maybe somewhat during the Bush administration, mainly because that was such a pretty much unmitigated disaster. And then with the relative success that Obama has had, I think that is beginning to change. And of course, the baby boomers are getting older and dying off. And, and our generation is well, hell, our generation has become less relevant. Actually, that's the millennials that are coming up now that aren't buying the same line,
No, totally.
And so now you have an opportunity to actually change things.
Yes, to change things. But the thing that's fascinating is, like my parents are total Republicans. I love my parents. They're great people. But, they're white, middle class, maybe upper middle class, white Americans who are totally like, so when I was there for the holidays, we're not supposed to talk politics, but it happens. And it's fascinating to me that I get to sit at a table with my crazy sister, who's an ex-police officer, who an ex-military police officer, totally racist, totally horrible. And then there's my dad, who's not so racist, but definitely pretty much a Republican. And, these people, we shouldn't let these people in, and everyone's a terrorist. And I'm like having to explain to them that they're not. But my dad actually sat and listened to me. And I think I changed his mind a little bit around the whole understanding of Muslims, because, the whole Muslim thing is a whole nother thing that's just ridiculous and out of control. Like we have to shut down borders now. We're not going to let anybody in the country. And I'm like, do you see similarities to Nazi Germany?
Right.
Right? Like, who's not seeing the similarities and pretending like it's not happening? It's just totally creepy.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the situation out in Oregon, and I mean,
Right,
imagine if this was the new Black Panther movement. Imagine if this was
right,
an Islamic group.
right.
You
Exactly, my
know,
friend.
we
So
we
why
would be a country less one wildlife preserve right
is
now after we bombed the shit out of it.
Now, it's hard to tell people this country is built on all kinds of people from all different
Yep,
countries. Why do
exactly.
we keep forgetting that?
Except of course the people who were here when all those people first came over. It's not built on
Exactly.
those people so much. Everyone else though. Yeah,
And
exactly.
to make generalized statement that all Muslims are this or all black people are this or
Right.
all black is so gross and
Yeah.
so horrible and so hurt. It just hurts everything. It just
Right.
hurts everything.
So now I'm curious. I think the transgender tipping point, if you will, with at least and I it's happened in the last 2 years. Certainly with a lot of the entertainment media like Orange is the New Black, Laverne Cox, etc. But I think that the big milestone just last year was with the Caitlyn Jenner story. Okay,
Sure.
and I'm curious how because I guess early on everyone had all this great hope, and I know that she's become somewhat more controversial of late. I'm curious how you think she's doing right now as a spokesperson, and then also what you felt at the time about her being the first big news story instead of say someone like Laverne Cox or Chaz Bono, for example, or yourself, for example.
Good luck on me.
Well, yeah, I mean. There are reasons we understand, but yeah, but I mean, how do you view that? And I guess what is she doing right? Where is she lacking?
Yeah, it's a really important topic. It's a difficult thing because I'll tell you what, I'm a fan of hers. I'm a fan of
Really?
hers for these reasons.
Okay.
She didn't need to do that, nor does she have to do it, nor does she in any way she could have had her surgery, had her time, and be all flown all over the world and partying her butt off and not giving a crap about the community. Think
Okay.
about it.
All
She
right.
does not have to be a voice for this community. Yet she chose to put herself out there.
Right.
I have a lot of adoration for her, and I think that she is incredible for taking the time and energy to put herself out there.
Okay.
That said, yes, she is not the representation of our community, and she knows that.
Okay.
The fact our community is so hurtful and hateful on so many levels, on so much, they're not thanking her. They're not saying, "You're amazing. Thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you for letting the people in Idaho who live in the middle of the mountains and
Right.
they see Bruce Jenner now as Caitlyn Jenner go, oh wow," and it opens a conversation that
Right.
I could never open up.
Right.
Not even Chaz Bono could open up.
Right.
Not even Laverne Cox could open up. Only person that could possibly do that would be somebody like Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
So for me, she eases into a world that none of us would have been able to open up the doors for. And now she gets the conversation started.
Okay.
Visibility is everything. Visibility creates change. No matter who or what it is, somebody has to create that visibility.
Okay.
We need to stop saying she's not the representation. She's not. She's never said it.
Okay.
She never implies it.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't want to be. She just is part of.
Right.
So I think she's doing a huge service for us, and that she's letting the conversation start. And once the conversation starts, we can all jump into the conversation. So people just need to get off her back. I mean, she's not perfect. None of us are. Right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, it's just that. It's just that.
Right. Now, speaking of the conversation and getting well, there was a conversation. God, it almost seems like a generation before this, but it was only probably only a couple of years, and that was the It Gets Better campaign, started by Dan Savage, and I believe you made a contribution to that as well.
Yes, I did. It was
tell me a little bit about that.
For me. I wanted to do it. He reached out to me and I said, oh yeah, I totally want to do this. And so then I just put the camera on and I was going to be all Mr. Nice, happy guy that I am. And then all of a sudden, like, it just came out of me because I started to just picture myself speaking to a young trans guy who wants to kill himself. That was just my vision, was sort of myself in a way. And then I started remembering how I cut myself and how I would just hate myself and bang on my chest so my breasts wouldn't go. And just, it just all came and I just broke down in the middle of doing it and started crying and talking about how, you can make it and blah, blah, blah. And then I looked at it and I was like, I'm not sending this. I'm not sending this. I am so freaked out. And then something just happened and I was like, dude, this isn't about you at all. This is about saving somebody's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I just pressed the send button. And Dan got it, and he literally wrote me back in like 2 minutes. Dan Savage wrote me back, and he said, "Oh my God, Buck, this is the most powerful thing. I swear. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and letting me have this." And that was that. And it just, it just was that. And it was one of the starts of me letting myself be vulnerable in my speaking. Sometimes I cry and I feel so vulnerable and weak and weird, and because men are taught not to cry, and we have this weird thing about being masculinity, but it's really changed my whole speaking and everything, and really made me much more approachable on so many levels, especially with cisgendered men and young men who come to me after my talks when I'm so emotional, and they just say, "Thank you so much for being this vulnerable man," because it's just something you don't see often. And it just makes me have, just this feeling of that you're a genuine, real person. So, that was an amazing experience for me doing that, doing that thing for Dan Savage. It was incredible.
And now you, back in, I believe it was 2011, you put out a documentary film called Sexing the Trans Man. And you'd mentioned at the beginning of the show that this has actually turned into an ongoing series. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I had the idea that, I don't want to be the representation of the trans community, which I was getting a lot of that early on in my work. And so I realized, I just thought of this idea of making docu-porn, which basically lets you kind of understand this guy before you start seeing him in a sexual, place. And so I just started interviewing guys about their change and talking about their surgeries and talking about hormones and then talking about how it affected their sexuality. And, and so many of these men started to talk about how their transitioning started to change their sexuality. And a lot of them were becoming gay men. And this was happening so much. And so it was fascinating for me. And so it just became a huge hit because nobody had ever documented, the transition in sexuality before. And so it just became something that no one saw, and it gets shown in all the universities throughout the United States. I get asked to come and speak everywhere about it. It just really took my work to a more educational level, which has been really great for me to be able to do that.
And where will people find this if they want to go check it out?
Sexingthetransman.com or buckangel.com. It's on both my websites.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So now, a little bit more about your own personal story, because you talked about essentially the teenager being with self-harm and being suicidal. Now, you mentioned 21 years ago, so we're talking about early 90s, I guess. Is that right? Okay. And I'm curious at the time, how is it that you came even across the idea of because, as you say, there was no internet and there was no really broad-based understanding within the mainstream medical community at the time of this in a lot of cases. How did you even come across the idea that, okay, this is what's going on, this is who I am?
Yeah, it was difficult because I went to a lot of therapy, and most of the therapists would say, "You're a very male identified, or masculine female," something weird like that. I'm like, yeah, I feel like a man. And they'd be like, "No, you're just a very masculine female." I'm like, "No, I'm not a lesbian."
Right. And that just never felt right, but nobody had. So what was the first moment in which you said, "Oh, no, this is it"? What was that aha moment for you?
I saw a documentary, an obscure documentary from Europe, and it had a woman who became a man. And it was like, what? Not one of my many, many therapists ever said to me, "You could have a sex change," is what we called it back in the day, a sex change. And I was like, what? I could be a man? What? And then I remember just having this thought in my head, and I went back to my therapist, and she just kept insisting that I was very masculine woman. And then I was like, I need to find another therapist. And then I found this woman, a lesbian woman, and I went to her, and for a month I just would go there and sit and not say a word because I was just so distraught and didn't know any direction in my life. And then one day I just said to her, "I feel like a man." And I was waiting for her to shoot me down. And she said, "You know what? I believe you." And I was like, what? Am I hearing this? And because of her, she saved my life. And we're very good friends to this day. And she said to me, "How can we make this happen for you?" And again, no internet. So what I did is I started going to bookstores. Remember bookstores?
Vaguely.
And I went to a bookstore and I had no idea what I was looking for
Right.
at all. It was this very famous bookstore in West Hollywood, California called A Different Light Bookstore. And I went to the magazine rack and there was this amazing homemade punk rock printed out book with staples in the side of it, and it's all hand printed off the printer. And it's called Transgender Resource Guide for Male to Female. And I thought, what? And I started looking at it and I thought, I'm the opposite of this.
Right.
And then there was a hormone doctor in there and I called him and he said, I've never worked with a woman who wants to be a man, but I'm willing to do it if you're willing to be my guinea pig. He used that word. He said guinea pig. I'm willing to be his guinea pig.
Right.
And basically that was the start of everything. Both my hormone doctor and my top surgery doctor had never worked with, I was both their first and both basically a guinea pig. And that's how it all started for me. I was very lucky. I was very, very lucky to be able to get people who were willing to work with me at that time.
And no question in your mind that was what you wanted, or was there some trepidation at the time?
Oh my God, I was so freaked out because I didn't get to go to Google and put in transgender photos of female to male. I didn't get to do that. I had to say, oh my God. So everything from most of my life, this was always my mantra. My mantra was, if it doesn't work out, I'll just kill myself.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's wow.
So now, I said that to myself. I'll never forget. If it doesn't work out, I'll just kill myself.
Oh my God. Now how will once you make this discovery, start this journey, if you will, if that's, I hate that cliche, but I don't really have a better way of putting it. What were the reactions of friends and family?
Oh my God. My whole gay women community, because that was the community I was in. It was the community that, I mostly dated women. I was not, and I was a dyke for sure. Yeah. But that said, I was very masculine and very male identified in a lot of ways. They freaked out on me. Every single one of them were calling me traitor. You're disgusting, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to today.
Yeah.
Any of them email me and ask me how to start transitioning.
No kidding.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not kidding. It's fascinating to me. And of course, I'm a different guy than I was back then. Back then, I would have said, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. After that, yeah.
How can I help you, my friend? Because I realized I was just ahead of my time. But wow, I won't forget the way I was treated. I was treated horribly by my girlfriends, by people just were like, you're a freak.
Right.
This freaky. Nobody was doing it. It was only, when you thought of transsexual back then, most people would think of hookers on Santa Monica Boulevard. You know what I mean? That was the idea of being a transgender person or transsexual, which is quite sad because it clearly wasn't that.
Right.
But I was clearly way ahead of my time, and I had no community of trans men really. Nobody. I did it all on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Buck, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking your time. And remember, folks, actually, let's have the website one more time for the video and the ongoing series.
Right on sexingthetransman.com and buckangel.com. And you can buy all my films and see all my stuff on buckangelentertainment.com.
There you go. Yeah, go check it out. And Buck, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, my friend.
Wow. I want to thank Buck again for coming on the program. I really had a great time talking to him. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that we had. Hope that it was educational for some of you and inspirational for others. Really great guy. Really hope to have him on again at some point in the future. Please go and check out his website and his YouTube channel because really great stuff. As always, if you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard here tonight or suggestions for future shows, guests, or topics, really like to hear from you. You can email me at niceguy9418@usa.com. Leave a comment on my blog at eddiecabot.blogspot.com. You can friend me on Facebook at Eddie Cabot. Hit my like page at Niceguy Eddie. You can follow me on Twitter at Niceguy Eddie Cab, Tumblr at Niceguy Eddie Cabot. And if you'd like to support IMHO, Rainbow Radio, and the content creators that we have on, please visit my Patreon at Niceguy Eddie. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and keep on listening to Rainbow Radio.